And we're looking for it on the return. If you have it open,
I think we are live.
I don't see it. I don't see it yet. Do you see it? Waiting for FCP.co.
There's a 30-second delay, isn't there, between us?
Well, I'm a lot further from you.
Okay.
So I'm assuming there's a little bit of cable delay.
Oh.
Mute your spare audio. There we go. All right. Looks like we're live.
Okay. So.
And I hear someone's echo.
Yeah. If you have a YouTube window open, mute it or just close it. It is working. Welcome everybody. Let me. You're muted. Go ahead. Do you want to talk, Peter? Or you're making me host? I believe you've made me host. No, I'm co-host. While we get this sorted, I'm just going to talk. I have a few things I want to say. First of all, and I am actually the host, I want to welcome everybody to this little experiment. We're calling it FCP.co live. And it is a pleasure to be asked to participate in this discussion. Before we get going, I want to introduce kind of the concept of what I like to call the Lindsay rule of order. It's a way to control a live discussion like this. And everything I'm about to tell you, I've borrowed from a man who's much smarter than me. If you're an attendee and you want to ask a question, use the Q&A function in Zoom. You could type that in and we'll get to those. You can also raise your little digital hand, your Zoom hand. And that, I believe, is a button at the bottom of your screen. And if we know you, don't be surprised if we pull you in to join the conversation. So like Ryan, I see you're there. Gallardo, I see you're there. Alex will be joining us a little later. We may just pull you in to join the conversation. Don't be surprised by that. If I don't know you, like immediately, I apologize. But let's get introduced. We just want to be careful about letting just random people in because bad things can happen. And then as a panelist, we can try to keep our mics off. It just helps the broadcast go a little smoother. If you don't know, good Zoom tip, the space bar, if you press and hold, it is like a push to talk. So if you want to keep your mic shut, you can do that. And if you want to interrupt a certain thing, use your real hand, this one. And then, at a good break, or we'll call you in, whatever. So anyway, let's start the discussion. Peter, I want to say thanks for letting me do this. And I realize also that it's only because other people have helped us out. So I'm going to just share a screen here. I apologize. Nothing fancy. So I want to thank the people at Otherworld Computing. They're actually making this happen. Without them, we'd all be doing something else. I don't know exactly what yet. I dig OWC. I have some great stories to tell you. And over time, I will, about great experiences that I've had with their products and services. And if you don't know about them, please go check that out. And frankly, if you're on a Mac and you don't know OWC, you might have bigger problems. But anyway, thanks. Thank you, OWC, for making that happen. Great products, great services. And that's the business end of this. Peter, am I missing anything that you want me to mention?
Well, you could mention the software sponsor. You're allowed to do that.
Oh, well, there's this other guy.
This is other kind of like little plug-in company that tries to keep the lights on.
I've heard of
this operation.
Yeah, he makes a few plugins. Anyway, Industrial Revolution, and I apologize because certainly at least once I'll say Industrial Revolution. I apologize.
I think most people do. That's the problem when it comes to Google searches. But there you go.
You're gonna have to come up with. You're gonna have to explain the name someday.
Yeah, we'll do one day, but not now.
Okay.
But
So
I'm
anyway,
quite keen to go on to your next slide, though, because it
By
may
the way,
be.
this is the most high-tech way I've ever seen through a half-assed keynote deck to go present all of this stuff. Chris, I am blown away by the technological superiority on
the
display.
last image we want to
impressive.
show, and this came from our test recording that we did last week.
Somebody
this got
compared
sent
your
to us.
hair. Thanks.
No,
That's
not a
great.
problem.
I love it. Yeah.
So joining us today
from Babylon 5, by the way. I had to look it up.
So
that wasn't
joining
Fletch
us
Gordon?
today, what's that?
Was that Fletch Gordon or Babylon 5? Which one was that?
Babylon 5. Guy, it's one of the characters from Babylon 5 who had two wives, apparently.
Good.
I'll take
we
your word
resolved
for
that.
it.
Thanks, guys.
I'll take your word for it. So joining us today are our invited guests are Steve Bays. And Steve, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I tried for so long to get you on my podcast when you were still at Apple, and it was a running joke that you and I had.
Yes. Yeah, that wasn't possible. They had Apple ninjas ready to take me out the minute that I agreed to that. So
they still may.
They still might. I know. I locked the door on the office. But yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. It's I've always wanted to be on because you had such great discussions, and I'd be listening to them, on the Apple bus, and I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, but and trying to participate in my own little way. But
I always wondered if I was missing the boat on half of the stuff I was saying, but I did get the calls. Every once in a while I'd get a call. Hey, yes, so you were talking about the multicam editor. I want to set you straight on a couple of things. And those were, honestly, it was an honor. I would like to say, oh my God, Steve Bays called me. So, and then also joining us today, and this is our secret embargoed guest, because I wasn't able to talk about it early, is Emery Wells from Frame.io. Emery, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I understand you have some big news today. Would you be interested in sharing that here, or do you want to? No, obviously you're going to share it. What do you got for us today?
I am going to share it. First, I want to say I'm blown away at how, this is a call that's clearly run by a bunch of video experts. This has been a flawless experience so far.
Wow. That was something Peter and I were not expecting to hear at all.
Can I just put my hand up to say the video feedback was me? I had another window underneath a window, so I put my hand up to that one. Won't make the edit. Oh,
okay. So that was sarcasm, Emery?
That was sarcasm. Yes.
Damn, I thought it was a compliment. Okay.
Yeah. So we got some big news today, and we're releasing Frame.io 3.6, which is packed full of a bunch of great features. So should I just walk through the headlines? How do you want to do this?
You can say anything. You can share anything. You could share your screen if you want. Actually, I might have to make you a co-host to do that. But do you have anything you want to show us?
I don't have anything readily available to share on my screen that would be, sort of well prepared.
Okay.
I'd be bumbling around with clicks, and you probably don't want to see that. But yeah, it's a big release. Just released it this morning, actually. So this is perfect timing. One of the new headline features is a brand new app. So we launched something called Frame.io Transfer, which is going to be sort of the new hub for exchanging or for kind of uploading and downloading files into Frame.io. So Frame.io has always been known for our really fast and really good uploader. But there were always challenges downloading, because when you download something via the browser kind of hijacks the download. They manage the download. So we have no ability to control the download. It's not our own code. It's not our own downloader. And so if you're downloading large files or complex folder structures, it was a bit of a crapshoot. So we released Frame.io Transfer. Now this was originally slated for release later this year, but because of all of the remote work that everyone's doing, and there's a need to be moving more files around via cloud services than maybe was kind of pre-COVID, we decided to release this as a beta with download only functionality, because that was a kind of a gap in the workflow. You could get lots of files into Frame.io, but then if someone on the other end needed to download your source files, your camera neg, that was challenging. So we released it, and you get all the same acceleration that you'd expect that you were getting with the upload. And then one of the really neat features of this is we allow you to download via XML or EDL. So if you have all your source files up on Frame.io, somebody has done an offline edit, they can just kick out an XML and then send it to whomever, the person that's doing the color grade, the finish, and they can download those files, just the files that were used in the edit, via an XML. So you say download via XML, and that's a really great workflow. And in fact, we have a whole episode coming out tomorrow, our Workflow from Home series coming out tomorrow, which showcases how this works for like remote color grading workflow and uses the transfer app, hosted by Michael Cioni. So definitely check that out tomorrow. In addition to, sorry, you were gonna ask a question?
Nope, go ahead.
So in addition to the transfer app, we also have a bunch of new features to our sharing flows. So for a collaboration product like ours, sharing is really essential. And we now have folder sharing finally, so you can share folder structures. When you could share, you could select many assets and share them, but they would appear in sort of like a flat view of the assets. Now it works as you'd expect. So you select a folder, share that out. If you change something in the folder on the Frame.io side, it gets reflected in the share link that you've sent out. So that's really nice. And then in addition to that, we have a number of new security features for sharing. So we have secure sharing. So similar to the way that you might use something like Google Docs, where you can say, I only want to allow these specific emails to access this link. Prior to that, we had the ability to password protect a link, and that's great. But if you really want to lock it down and make sure that only specific emails access it, now those recipients will have to log in. They'll have to create an account, but you can be sure that it's the authenticated, correct person that you've intended to have access to that. And if they were to share the link and share the password, it wouldn't work, right? They could share the link and share the password with somebody else and it wouldn't work. So that's a really great feature. But probably the most impressive and something I'm really excited about, because we've been working on this for a really long time. Probably over a year, we've been working on this feature, is something that we're calling Watermark ID, which is a real-time and on-demand transcode of personally identifying information of the viewer, of the recipient. So if I send you a link, Chris, if you're if you're the reviewer of my top secret project, I send you the link. So I put in your email, chrisfenwick@gmail.com. And when you hit play, we do a real-time on-demand transcode, and we put your name, your IP address, your timestamp, your email into every frame. So I'm
totally guilty. If it gets out, if that leaks, it's my fault.
That's right. So a very strong visual deterrent. And one of the things that we're most proud of this feature is that the playback time is really fast. So you can imagine if you had a 2-hour movie, well, how long does it take to transcode a 2-hour movie so that we can then show that to you with your custom information burned into it? The playback speed, regardless of the length of the video, is less than 2 seconds. So you can hit play and it immediately starts playing. If you scrub to the middle, it will stop the transcode where it was. It'll start the transcode in the middle. Wow. And it'll play. It'll play from that point forward. It's similar to a live streaming architecture. We're live streaming now, right? So this signal is going up into the cloud and it's being transcoded and it's being sent. But actually, you were talking about this earlier. There's actually a lot of latency. So a typical live stream latency, 30 seconds is not bad. You can do a lot to get live streaming latency down. And in fact, the whole video engineering world is working on getting live stream latency down. And so Apple introduced last year before, low latency HLS, which can bring that down. But still, it can be several seconds. And you don't want to scrub in the video and then wait 7 seconds, 10 seconds for it to start playing again, or even for the first time. Right. So getting that latency down as low as possible is a really critical feature, a really critical thing for us to get right. So it's a cool feature, and you can also totally configure it with this template editor. So we have a whole sort of watermark template editor. You can say, all right, well, for everyone in my account, I want to create this template that's going to kind of force them to have this personally identifying information into every share link they send out. So, name, email address, IP, timestamp. You can put behaviors in it. So you can say, I want this text block to be a scrolling behavior. It's pretty sophisticated, and I'm excited about it because obviously, as media professionals, the sensitivity, the security of our assets is really important. It's really important to our clients. Maybe for some jobs it's not, but certainly for some jobs it really is. If you're working with an advertising client, or for MIO customers, or now Hollywood studios, and they're doing pre-release or sort of unreleased Hollywood feature films, the security requirements are intense, and we can confidently say that we meet those security requirements.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen rips and stolen copies, like around like all the awards times when they used to send out the DVDs, and all of a sudden Michelle Pfeiffer's version of the movie got pirated or whatever. I would imagine the studios are really keen on having that be a feature for sure.
That's right. Yep.
I also it's hard to imagine, like, so let's say you send that to 5, 10, whatever people. That's an incredible amount of horsepower to, if they all hit play at the same time, and it has to be encoded 10 different times with 10 different, watermarks. That's impressive.
Well, so yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, the technical challenges are steep. It doesn't just transcode it to one resolution. It transcodes it to 4 or 5 different resolutions, because we have adaptive bitrate streaming. So it's actually 4 or 5 transcodes for every playback session. And then also, 4 or 5 people wouldn't be a big deal. We actually have over 1 million users now. So we're close to 1 million users. So I don't think we've actually officially hit, but we're extremely close. So yeah, we need to make this scale for, many thousands of people doing it at the same time. It's all in the cloud. And it's not only does it take a lot of horsepower, it's very expensive. It's a very, very expensive feature to run. So it is something that's available to our enterprise customers. It is an add-on to our enterprise plan, because we're running machines in the cloud all the time to do these transcodes. And again, it's every time you hit play. If you hit pause and you come back, an hour later, we redo that transcode on demand.
Emery, I remember having a conversation with you before Frame.io was real. It was Alex and I on our old podcast, and you had gone through an explanation, and I think it's good information, but I don't think most people really understand it. Can you break down a little bit about how, like, for your uploads? Mm-hmm. I remember you had explained how you segment, slice it up, upload it. Explain that, because I don't think a lot of people really understand that. They appreciate the horsepower that they're getting, but I don't think they really get all the stuff that's under the hood that's happening.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to explain that. So our uploader is one of the features that people probably love most. They're constantly comparing the upload speeds to Dropbox and other things. And, the truth is, we're not doing anything super magical. We're just doing sort of a number of things together that enable you to experience these really fast upload speeds. So there's a software side, which is something which is the uploader that we have written, that's available in the browser. And then there's an infrastructure side. So first on the software side, typical, so browsers are all HTTP based. That's the protocol they use to communicate information, communicate data. And it's a really old protocol. And it was never designed for, just pumping tons and tons of data through. It was designed for resilience. So when a web browser makes a request to a server, if it's doing some kind of data exchange, you've probably all heard of HTTP packets, right? So the data is in these packets. And when you upload a file, it's sent in packets. And so one packet goes to the server, and then it says, the client or the web browser says, hey, server, did you get that packet? And then the server responds, yep, I got the packet. Send me the next packet. And then they repeat that, right? So there's this overhead to this communication. Hey, did you get the packet? Yeah, I got the packet. Did you get the packet? Yeah, I got the packet. And that just puts a ceiling on the speed, the amount of data, because just that back and forth chatter. So HTTP is slow. And the way that we get around that is, well, the way that other companies get around that is we're not the only product in the market that offers accelerated uploading. There are dedicated file transfer solutions, Aspera and Signient and things like that people have probably heard of. And what pretty much everybody else does is they say, well, we're not going to use HTTP because it's slow. So we're going to use UDP, which doesn't have these limitations. But the problem with UDP is that you have to use a separate app. A download, you know, historically you do like a Java applet, or you download a separate desktop app, or you have sort of a plugin, or, you know, something like that. And that's not terrible, but, you know, sometimes they're cumbersome to deal with. And we, from the beginning, we wanted to have something that would work natively in the browser without anything. So you just drop a file into Frame.io and you get the accelerated upload. And so the way that we do it is we do a multi-part upload. So we take a single file, so say you have a 10 gig file, and we break it up into thousands of blobs, thousands of data blobs. And we do parallel streams of those blobs onto the server. And then each one of those streams is doing that communication that, hey, did you get the packet? Yeah, I got the packet. Did you get the packet? Yeah, I got the packet. But we're doing that, we're parallelizing that so we can just fully saturate the amount of bandwidth that you have. And so if you have a gigabit connection, then we can handle that, saturate that just fine. So then, of course, once it gets to the other end on the server side, now we have to take all these thousands of blobs and we have to merge them back together. And then we have to do a checksum to make sure that we have, you know, properly merged them back together and that the file is complete. That's kind of that's sort of the software side. On the infrastructure side, we're all familiar, probably, or a lot of people are familiar with CDNs. So CDNs are used, or content distribution networks. They're used when, if you have a viral video on YouTube that millions of people around the world are trying to watch. Well, like, I don't know, sometimes I don't think people realize that the internet is actually just a file on a computer in a room somewhere. And then people are trying to access that one file, right? So if you're in India and there's a file in San Francisco on a server, like, internet's not, it's not like that's a long distance that data has to travel. There's tons of latency and it's going to get slow. And then there's going to be, what, 1 million people trying to access that one file. That's going to get bottlenecked. So what a content distribution network does is it takes that one file and it spreads it out all over the world. So there's many instances of that file, and the people that are watching that file are watching the version, or requesting the version that's closest to their geographic location. So for any kind of large scale video distribution, or really kind of any large scale data distribution on the internet, CDNs are absolutely essential. Otherwise the internet just wouldn't work. And so that's like a tried and true thing for distribution. We basically took that concept and we use it in reverse. So it just in the same way you have this data latency for distributing content. If somebody is in the UK and they're trying to upload, well, where are they uploading to? They're uploading just to a server. It's in a room. It happens. Ours is in North Virginia. So, if you're in the UK, that's a long way to go. So instead of having that user upload to North Virginia, we use that content distribution network in reverse. So they upload to a data center nearest to them, and they have a low latency connection, and they use that multi-part, sort of parallelized uploading. And then once the file is in that data center in that location, we can do our own managed accelerated transfer from data center to data center back to our origin in North Virginia. So it's kind of all of these things working in concert that enable us to do this. Now, again, just like the watermark ID, this feature has a really big cost. It's very expensive, but we don't charge extra for it. So, you get it. It's a little bit difficult to sort of like, people know, hey, I get this fast uploader, but because we don't sort of price it out separately, it's a little bit difficult to quantify. But it costs us a ton of money to facilitate this global infrastructure that enables these low latency connections all over the world. Is
it something you've ever thought about actually breaking it down and saying you can have the standard uploader for this amount, pay a little extra, you get the faster uploader? Is it worth it, or do you just want to be known as having the fast uploader?
Yeah, I think we just want everyone to have a great, the thing is like when we were designing it, this is something we've offered since day one. And like, it doesn't matter. It's not whether you're doing, sort of local content for your local market and you're doing, web stuff or whatever, or you're doing like feature films. Everybody has big files they got to move around. Like, it's such an essential part to doing this work successfully. We thought really everybody just needs to have it. So we want to make sure everyone has it.
Cool. Yeah. The other thing I was noticing in the chat room on Zoom here, and Peter, I'm not watching it as much on YouTube. People were totally stoked about the folder downloading, like tons of chatter about that. So Bravo.
Yeah, the folder sharing is something we've wanted to have forever, and glad that we now finally have it. There are a couple other small features that are probably worth just mentioning. So we have, we always do enhancements. It's just as much as the big features are important, the small features are almost equally as important. And so we have some nice enhancements, like we have a new move and copy workflow. So if you had a deeply nested folder structure and you wanted to get a file that was in that deep nest all the way up to the top, you can right click and say, move to parent, move to parent, move to parent, move to parent, move to parent. Kind of sucks. So now you can just say move, and you get a little modal and navigate to wherever you want to move it. But really, if you're moving files around all day in Frame.io and doing kind of asset management, media management, you're going to love this. And then we revamped our notifications. So as a collaboration tool, notifications, not a sexy feature, getting the right notifications at the right time is like really critical to having a good experience. And we're way smarter about how we handle notifications, similar to like, how Facebook would do. If you get 10 people commenting on one thing, it'll say, Chris and 9 others commented on this. So you can sort of manage those notifications and use them more effectively. And then lastly, or I guess second to last, we have a new offline mode in our iOS app. So now you can download files and watch them offline. And you can also comment offline. So really, this is kind of the feature for the exec or the reviewer that's in the plane or in the air all the time, which is kind of not happening right now. But we've gotten tons of requests for this, and now you'll be able to review offline or off the grid.
It's going to be big when we're all let out of our houses.
The second we're out,
it's going to get hammered.
Planes, yeah. And then lastly, we have an update to our After Effects integration. So we've always had we've had an After Effects integration for a long time, but we now have background rendering support. So if you upload to Frame.io via the After Effects integration, the rendering of the comp will happen in a background thread, and it doesn't lock up your system. So we use the AE command line background renderer now, and it's really it was kind of an essential thing because you don't want to sort of lock up your machine while you're rendering to upload to Frame.io.
Well, I got to say, it's been really impressive to me having watched this whole process and actually having built my own system that we use in our company.
Oh, that's right.
It's been really impressive to watch how universal Frame.io seems to be. I bet I just want to do an experiment. We have like 22 people attendees here. Use your little digital hand, and I'll get the answer in a second. Raise your hand if you're using Frame.io. I bet it's 100%. It's such a universal tool. It's been really impressive to see. There's very seldom are things so completely accepted, it's just
there's a lot of them. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Of them. Yeah. I mean, I've been using Frame.io since I think it came out. I think if we had a conversation a long time ago, Emery, I think, and I've been using it. And there are certain jobs I do now that I couldn't do without Frame.io. And some of the ones where we have something like 25 people hanging off the content in different countries, and it gets uploaded automatically because we've got a guy who's written something that, we get footage coming from, different places via the Degero. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And then that gets uploaded so everybody can look at it. So you've got journos with it on their phones and everything like that. So a lot of it's in foreign language. So we've got people translating and things like that. And it really can do it without it. Nearly, well, I would say everybody there's a little bit of reluctance to start off with, what's this? Why do I have to log in or whatever? But as soon as people get on it, they just see the benefits straight off. The fact they can just tap on it, leave a note, and they don't have to kind of like write the time code down and everything, which would, what they do beforehand. I think the transfer sounds really interesting. Now, I mean, the big question is that included in my subscription, or is it a pay as you go, or?
No, the transfer is included in the subscription, so no extra cost for that. Okay, and I will mention, just to be clear, so the transfer app today is download only, because that was this gap, and we actually built that first, and with everyone working remotely, felt like getting that out to market would help a lot of people right now. But this will be sort of our file transfer hub for both upload and download. We have this other kind of Mac companion app that has watch folders. Our intention is to kind of converge those features into this new transfer app.
Okay. Well, that would be really cool with watch folders on there, because that would certainly help my workflow. So do I get a kind of, I mean, my account gets spanked quite, a lot. And I keep thinking I'm going to get a little message saying you've used your, I bump up against the limit every now and then, the gig limit. Is there a cap on the transfer, or is it just within a reasonable rate? Are you putting it on a...
Yeah, we don't. So something that the thing about storage is that storage, you look at like, well, what does it cost to have, a gigabyte of storage in a cloud service, and you get a certain price, and it's like, it's not a lot of money, right? But that is not that's not the full cost of storage. So the bandwidth is more expensive than the storage. So utilizing that storage is more expensive than the storage itself. And then you have request costs, and then you have redundancy costs, and then you have, sort of what we talked about earlier with our sort of the way we use the CDN reverse and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, my only point being is when people think about cost of storage and you look at sort of like what a service like Frame.io offers versus sort of the raw cost of storage from Azure, for example, or Google or whatever, it's not apples to apples, but the question was, so to answer your question, we do not put a cap on bandwidth. We have a cap on storage, active storage utilized, but not on bandwidth. Because you know what, it's kind of too annoying to like keep track of that as a user. Oh, how much bandwidth did I use this month? Or how much? It's like, then I'm looking at bandwidth and I'm looking at storage, and it's just too much. So we said, you know what, we're going to make a sensible price that sort of guesses what the average utilization is going to be of storage and bandwidth. And then, some people go over, some people go under, but it's just sort of one simple price.
Yeah. Okay.
I gotta say, Emery, I was really looking for. Actually, Peter, I think I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
I've got a couple of other questions, but they can wait. You carry on, Chris, for a sec.
Well, I was gonna make a little bit of a segue here. So,
all right, I'll get my other two questions in then, if that's all right with you.
Please do.
Since you are now hosting, you can cut me off or do whatever you want.
And I have a comment after you have your questions.
Cool.
Yeah. Two things. I love the workflow extension with Final Cut Pro 10, but it doesn't seem to be fully configured for. Let me put it another way. There are things I do with the workflow extension, and then I have to go into the actual web app and do a few bits to sort things out. I mean, I would like to have a bit more functionality in the workflow extension, if not replicate the bigger experience.
Yeah. So those are always hard challenges and hard trade-offs for us to make that we discuss internally all the time, because we have these integrations. And what happens over time is you basically build every single feature in the integration that exists in the web app. And there's a lot of redundancy. And so, what you can do in an extension or an integration versus what you can do in kind of the full web app is always a bit of a trade-off. I mean, we're going to continue to invest in our integrations, and so over time they'll get more features, but yeah, those are spirited conversations internally.
And also, my last conversation before Felipe jumps in was we tried to share a program with one of the UK major broadcasters, so the commissioning editor could watch it with Frame.io, and their firewall blocked it. Is there anything that we can do, or without? We ended up having to put it onto Vimeo or whatever, and give that to them. But I don't think they realize yet the benefits they could have because they supply notes, all broadcasters supply notes on programs. I just thought the fact that having access to Frame.io would be so easy for them to put a note on the show, but we couldn't get past their firewall. Is there anything we could do about that apart from convince their IT department to do something?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you run into an issue like that, reach out to us. Firewalls are they're tricky. People have them like you'll find one company where their firewall blocks some other service, but not ours. And there doesn't seem to be a tremendous amount of rhyme or reason as to why that happens, when we experience it. But yeah, I'd say reach out to us and let us know, and then we can look into it and try to see, well, do we understand why we're being blocked, and then can we work with that company to figure it out.
Yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, we talk about hardware and software issues all the time, but sometimes it's just a wetware issue. Sometimes you just have to deal with the people. I had a similar kind of thing happen, not with Frame.io, but one of our clients, and we had to convince them to use a software service, especially now, and it's just a wetware thing. You know, you
Peter,
got to talk to the people.
It seems strange to me that you would have a problem with an IT department at a large company. So you may want to look into how some of that process is, because it's usually very straightforward and easy to work with all of them.
I think me telling
Am I sensing sarcasm again?
I
think that was similar to my sarcasm earlier.
But me telling a big broadcaster's IT department to unblock a port or something isn't going to happen.
They like it when you're.
I disagree, Peter. I think it can happen. It will take some lobbying. It will take some explanation, but it happens. It can happen.
The higher up you go, the less bureaucracy there is.
But you know what, Peter, maybe it's a broadcaster that we have a relationship with. And so we could reach out to people that we work with there. We've now had pretty good penetration in the market. So there's always, but I would say, let me know and we can.
I'll tell you what, why don't I ping you an email after I've done this, and I'll, I don't want to say who it is on screen, obviously, but I'll send you an email. You might go, yeah, okay, I know.
Felipe, what was your question?
Yeah, I had, first of all, one comment. It's a feature from Frame.io that not a lot of people say, and I was there since the very beginning when it was implemented, is the single sign-on. So if you're in an enterprise and then you start using Frame.io services with their single sign-on integration, it's basically so seamless to send stuff throughout the whole corporation, people not needing to create accounts and things like that. So like Peter was saying earlier, sometimes you have to convince people, you need to create a new account and get into a new service. But in the company that I used to work for, once it was integrated with single sign-on, there was no convincing anyone. Here it is the link, the person gets in directly and it's allowed through their email. And they're already authenticated into the company single sign-on. So that's amazing. But the question that I have is, Emery was talking about them managing all the acceleration transfer on the CDN and so on. And there is an integration, as far as I can remember, with Vimeo, right? That you finished your video, it's on Frame.io and you put it on Vimeo. My question to Emery is, are there any plans to do the reverse? People have media in some other storage service such as Google Drive, Dropbox, and so on, because they tend to have these huge subscriptions to have archivals there, and to just import that footage from, let's say, Google Drive to bring into Frame.io to use the active storage on Frame.io and start working with it. I think that could be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's come up a lot. We've wanted to do that many times. It's sort of been one of those things that just kind of hasn't happened, things that you want to do for a long time. But I would say it's fair to assume that you expect something like that in the future. Also, I want to say that, this whole panel, in fact, were kind of part of Frame.io from the very beginning and early supporters. So thank you to all of you for your support over the years. I mean, I remember I met Steve very early, in fact, pre-launch, and Chris, we talked about Frame.io pre-launch, and Peter covered the initial launch, and Sam's and I've been in touch, I think, pre-launch as well. Felipe, you were there, you're a very early customer at your previous company, so huge thanks to the panel for the early support.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Steve.
Actually, with when we were working together on the workflow extensions, and I think your team was the first one to find out that I was actually leaving Apple, and there was this dead silence on the other end of the phone. And they're like, "Wait, and now we have to do it without you." I said, "Yeah, you'll do great," and they did. So I was out, but we wanted. It was important, I think, for that to look especially good as an integration with Frame.io. So yeah, it's always been a pretty high priority for development over there. Yeah.
Well, Emery, I think the takeaway I always get from talking to you is what you're doing is hard. It's hard to do well. It's hard to do at the level that you do it. But, nobody became an Olympic athlete by accident. Some things are hard to do, but it's worth it in the end. So thanks for putting all the hard work into it. It really is a great product, and it's amazing. And well over half of the people ended up raising their hands in the attendee section. So that's cool. Let's transition. Steve, talk about doing things that are hard. How is retiring from the most famous fruit company in the world?
I miss the fish at lunch. That was really good. At the Apple Park. Best part of Apple Park was the lunch. And the people, the people too, they were good too. No, it was, I do miss the team. And I know Emery's just picked one up from ex-Apple. So I don't know if that's, I think Estelle McGecky's announced it on her LinkedIn. So I think that's all official and everything. She's working for you. So that's great. Congratulations for both of you. But yeah, I miss the people, and don't miss the bus ride, which was about an hour and a half to 2 hours each way every day. So, I mean, I'd get up in the morning and I'd be online at 6 and be on the bus at 7 something, and answering all the emails from the rest of the world, and then get on the bus again at 6 and be answering emails for the rest of the world until about 7:30, 8 o'clock every night. So that part, I'd rather go swimming at the UCSF pool, which is generally what I do in the morning now. Well, I used to, and now that's all shut down. But no, I'm having a great time. Well, last year was primarily a lot of personal travel, because that was what I had lined up. So I traveled for about 3.5 months, going to Europe and Asia and all over the West Coast and Midwest. Not so much this year. So I'm looking around for different projects. I'm working with a lot of small entrepreneurs and developers. So some people come to me with some really interesting ideas. I help them flesh it out and help them with their marketing, and sometimes help them get funded if they're looking for that. So that's fun because there aren't so many rules when you work with developers that are that small, and you can move fast. And I know a fair number of people in the business that give them a call and say, "Hey, this looks cool. I think you'd like this," and put people together. So that's been fun. But yeah,
if anybody doesn't know, I should just say, and I think looking at the names I'm seeing around, I think everybody probably knows Steve was the product manager for Final Cut 10. We first met when you got to Apple. Actually, it was a funny day. I don't know how much of it you remember. You were a little nervous that day.
Yeah.
It was pre Final Cut 10, and I was directing one of the Apple seminars, and I think you had only been there a couple of weeks, and you got some message that says, "Go show up at Deanza 3. You're gonna do a thing," and you showed up and you looked around, and saw all the cameras. Like, what am I doing here? What? Like, oh, you're gonna explain Final Cut Studio on camera. It's like, I'm not ready to do that.
Yeah,
but
that's what they call drinking from the fire hose. When you start up there, and I was definitely drinking from the fire hose for quite some time. And there's such a premium put on the polished presentations, right? I mean, everything's just practiced and practiced and drilled and put months into these things. And then to just show up, it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a short job.
It wasn't my fault, by the way. I don't know if I ever explained that to you. It wasn't my idea to do it like that.
I was lucky to find Deanza 3 or whatever it was at the time. That was the hard part at the beginning. Yeah, it was hard. Moved out from Boston, and my wife was staying back at the house trying to sell it, and luckily she did very quickly. Right at then the market tanked, so I was lucky on that. But yeah, moving out here and starting all over again was quite the stressful experience. But it was the best thing I've ever done, and I don't regret it at all. It was wonderful, actually.
Well, I think the other day you and I were talking, and I said that the work that you've done, especially in the last 10 years. Of getting Final Cut 10 out the door. And yeah, everybody's heard all of the, complaints about the launch and what could have been done a little better. But I got to tell you, the end result is I know that many people who have joined us here, by the way, I'm pointing at the participants list here in the Q&A, and I have a bunch of windows open, that, my life is better because of Final Cut Pro. And it sounds silly to say that, but it is. It really is. And, when I first started the grill, I would say all the time that, you launched a product that was easily 10 years ahead of everybody else. They just didn't realize it yet. And you were so far ahead that people were looking at it and they didn't understand it. And it had to have been hard, to be there at that time and say, wait, I I'd like to explain something, and to be as sequestered or muzzled or whatever you want to call it by corporate, to not be able to defend what you had done.
Yeah, that was difficult for sure. I mean, I mean, in my career, I've traveled around the world talking to editors for 25, almost 30 years. And so I always like that face-to-face meeting with them. And even if it's a tense meeting, and I've had quite a few of those over the years as well, I walk away, you know, with a better understanding of their point of view, and hopefully, you know, adding back some critical thinking if it was lacking in their argument, or showing them something that changes their mind. And that's very rewarding to me, is to help people to improve their workflow, even if it's just to I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm doing the tips and tricks on the deep cuts on Alex Lindsay's Saturday morning sessions. And it's like, you know, I'm not really selling anything. I've got nothing to push. I just want people to see a little deeper into what all this work that maybe people haven't spent that time.
I got to tell you, what's really interesting, because, you know, I've been there for all of that. And by the way, once again, I apologize for putting you on the spot the other day. It's listening to you. You are so much an Apple man that every time you talk about Final Cut, you always say, well, what we are trying to do here, it's like, dude, you're not we anymore. Check your paychecks. You cannot let go.
Can I point out a comment on YouTube from Mike,
please,
who says, can I mention Avid? Steve, I have all your Avid handbooks. Thank you.
Thank you too. Yeah, I was writing the same book 4 times.
Yeah, I've got one.
Actually, I'm seeing a bunch of comments both on the YouTube chat and the chat in Zoom of people saying, my life has changed. It's better. We have better workflows. Thanks, Steve. I mean, there's a lot of people share the sentiment, and
thank you.
It's like I said about Emory. Some things are hard, and getting through that and pushing those things that you know are right, even though it seems like you're pushing against a wall. It's worth it, and I think that all of us can take that away with what we do. You know, the hard things in life are going to be hard, but it's worth it.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be hard. There was no, you know, it wasn't a surprise. We didn't wake up on day of shipment and go, oh,
easy day.
People are missing some functionality that was in Final Cut 7, huh? Because, you know, I mean, I made the joke a couple of weeks ago that I'm going to write something called the Renovators Dilemma. You know, it's going to be based on the Innovators Dilemma, but it's all about, you know, renovating instead of innovating, and obviously, and so what goes into that calculation, you know, as to how much to keep. And you know, I used to have what I call the baby to the bathwater ratio, and it's like, okay, how much baby are you going to toss out? How much water are you going to toss out? And like, you know, you have to it's a hard decision all the time, because it's like, well, we're going to toss out a little more baby than I would like this time. You know, it's like, well, okay, maybe next time we'll have, you know, we don't have to do it that way. So when you're innovating and deciding what to keep the same, and what to completely rethink, and I think we did a lot of excellent rethinking, but you know that there's going to be this break in what people are used to, and they sit down. You know, the phrase we used to use was, you know, just a lot of people like to turn the crank, you know, and turn the crank not only with editing, but with developing software. I mean, it's just a way of approaching something that's like, I just want to get down to the thing that I did yesterday, and I don't want to have to do it differently. So, you know, you're not going to get those people on board right away, but over time, and that's why I keep saying, look at where we are today, you know, whatever it is, 9 years later, 28, 29 versions later. And I think, you know, if you consider yourself a professional editor, you need to stay up on all of the technology that's going on, you know, not just the new camera, not just the new codec, not just the hard drives, whatever. I mean, that's all important, but you need to keep looking at it to seeing where you can take advantage of it, where it's going to help, where it's going to speed things up, where it's going to help out for things that maybe you couldn't do before, or it was too slow, or it's too expensive, or you want to get more people involved in the process. And so having a system that they can learn easily without having to go to film school. I mean, there's a lot of benefits into this sort of newer approach.
Yeah, you and I have talked many times about just the frustration. of people who are still judging, you know, all their views of Final Cut are based on like 1.0 or 10.1 or whatever.
Does it have multicam yet?
I've heard it does. I don't know.
Only does 1.5 cameras though, so they haven't quite got it down yet. Yeah, what is it, like 64 or something? I mean, you know, we went out to Nevada to shoot these crazy skiers skiing off cliffs with parachutes to demo the multicam thing, and you know, we had to have 2 helicopters, right? Because you have to have a helicopter to shoot the other helicopter. So people made fun of me for years after that, called me two helicopter bays. But the thing was, we had this video at the end of the day of these guys just like jumping off the cliff. I think they did it 2-3 times. And then you basically hit play, and it's all, I believe it was like, I'm trying to remember exactly, but it was all very high quality stuff, and it's just playing in real time, and people are switching. And you know, and I've seen this in several presentations actually. If you show something to somebody that's so far different, so far advanced from what they're used to doing, that they don't get it. Like you, it's just like, it's you know.
All I would say is there is another NLE out there that still cannot play 6 streams of 1080 back and show all the fields.
No matter Vegas.
It's, well, there are other NLEs available, but it just can't do it. Beefy computer, beefy storage, everything, but just inside it just can't do it.
There are NLEs that cannot play one stream full resolution. So I mean, it's always half resolution or quarter resolution. And like, oh yeah, I'm playing 8K quarter resolution. I'm playing 8K. Yeah, really.
Yeah, the other day on Alex's show, there was a kicking match. There's a bunch of people surrounding a puppy kicking it, and the puppy was called Final Cut 10. And it's everything they were saying was based on just lack of knowledge, and it was just so frustrating. I had to bite my tongue because I would have just exploded. But there was definitely some chats going on in the background. Like, I can't believe what these people are saying. Yeah, hey, Chris Summers is here. Hey, Summers, nice to see you. It was super.
I posted a set of tutorials on the site yesterday or something like that. And one of them I found was from from Clara, who does some Instagram stuff. I don't know if you saw it, but I started watching it because I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. And to watch her work Final Cut, it's just like, up it comes up there. You know, she goes, I'm just going to change this, goes up, reformats this, and thinking kind of, you know, I think I can edit quite quickly myself, but I'm just trying to keep up with her, what she's doing. And then I go, well, yeah, that's the future. That's how fast everything's going to go. And there you've got some old editors, myself included possibly, who are sitting there going JKL, you know, JKL up and down a clip. No, not that clip. Another clip, JKL, not that clip. You're just going to be out of work in 5 years' time.
I get frustrated when I just watch people in the Finder who don't know how to like open a folder. It drives me nuts. And some of them are people,
I think, for the most part, like, because their assistant come and turn the computer on.
Well, you know, one of the fascinating things about our industry is that our industry is so highly dependent on technology, but most of the industry are not technologists. And so, I would call our industry a bit more Luddite than not. And so, you know, something like Final Cut Pro, which offers a lot of, you know, sort of new ideas that you got to wrap your head around. You know, the people are they're so apprehensive to switch the kind of the people have learned. They learn something once and then they want to stick with it. I think one of the most fascinating things that I witnessed when I was running my post-production company, we did mostly broadcast advertising. We had, you know, we did color grading, we had smoke finishing systems. And I used to hire these freelance smoke artists. And, you know, smoke, obviously an older system. A lot of the freelance artists, you know, most of them were older, kind of middle-aged men. And they knew smoke inside and out, right? Just absolutely inside and out. You'd put them in front of the smoke system. And this was when smoke on Mac was a thing, right? So we were running smoke on Mac. You'd set them down on smoke, and they would just fly through smoke, right? But then you like Command H to hide smoke and ask them to like, hey, import some files from the Finder. They're like, the Finder? Whoa, what is this environment that I find myself in, this operating system, this Mac OS? And it was so weird because, but what it was is that, you know, they had built a career learning one piece of software that allowed them to express their creativity, right? Because they're more creative than technical. but there was just no breadth to their understanding of technology. And so I think that's something where there's a few examples that I saw, from folks that I had hired, but I think that's very true of the industry. And, certainly what's cool, I think, is that a whole new generation of filmmakers are coming into the world, and they are a generation that has grown up on technology. Like the people that are doing, in fact, this is what I find most interesting, is that for the first time in history, we have a generation of people that are growing up with video fluency. And that's never happened before in any previous generation. And so where it's happening is like in mobile video creation and TikTok video creation. But what does it mean when those people get a little bit older and they enter the workforce and they have all this video fluency? They know how to use video as a communication tool. They're far more technically fluent. How does that change the video and broadcast industry? I think it just becomes a much broader communication method, and people use video for far more purposes than it's necessarily used today.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. I mean, we saw it coming with the extra bandwidth on the internet, right? It's like all of a sudden every website had to have a video. Who's going to make that video? You're going to go down to one of your 3 post-production companies in your town to get that video made? No, there's going to be this huge growth in people that are going to learn how to do that, and they're going to just pick it up and run with it because the equipment's cheaper. I can do it on a laptop. The cameras are higher quality and smaller. I got one in my pocket. It looks pretty good. I can put that on a gimbal. I mean, that's the thing that Sam's been doing all over the place. It just blows people's minds to see the quality of the stuff that they're doing. And so I think, you got to take the film school stuff out of film school and you got to put it everywhere. But you put it at that level where, when they walk out, they can make a video presentation on anything. And
well, to build on that real quick. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I think, I'm a TikTok fan. I think it's a really fun app. And it's the most vibrant video community in the world right now. And the thing that's so fascinating about this is that, you get to see creativity from people that are actually really creative. They have, TikTok's a certain form of storytelling, but it is absolutely a form of storytelling. And you see so much creativity on that app from people that are, doing camera tricks and figuring out camera angles and editing techniques. And sometimes the timing, people are doing edits in the TikTok app, and it's they're doing it to music, to beats, to dancing, and whatever the case may be. And the timing for some of these younger people that are making these videos, their timing is so impeccable. Finding video editors that have an excellent sense of timing, the types of people that can do trailers and music videos and really hard hitting stuff that's all about being deeply connected with the rhythm of the music. And you just see it all over TikTok. Those people were never people that were welcomed or would have been welcomed into the world of video editing, right? It's young women.
Yeah,
it's just
TikTok has over 2 billion. TikTok has over 2 billion downloads. You have to take it seriously.
To build on all of this, I mean, look, we're used to everyone playing the game as it has been played, but pointing this out, the fact that there's so many creative people with these tools at their fingertips, what makes us think that they're still going to want to come into work anymore? And what makes us think that a lot of this content is not just completely disposable at a certain point, and the idea that things are going to continue in the way that they've been done, when now, like, frankly, you can turn out high quality content for pretty much nothing. This now is like, the conversation is going to be shifting in the next couple of years to the idea that, like, well, what's the point of this content that you're using? Why are you doing it? Why do you value it? Why does it have to be through this centralized pipe any longer? This is really the question when creators wake up and realize, well, what do I need you for? And this is going to be the really disruptive concept of, I'm just going to use this for whatever I'm going to use it for. And if what I do is useful to you, great. But if not, like, why are we talking?
I have an interesting question, which is, who thinks that this is going to take over as a real tool for creating, a real professional tool for creating video? I mean, like happening. One that like actual professionals use, not a social media crowd, but like
already happening.
Already happening.
I would go as far as
it's going. In fact, it's easier for certain types of content.
The NAR box is making it easy to do, editing over Wi-Fi, basically from a little local, little hotspot, and with obviously LumaFusion has got the most advanced UI for mobile. I think there's still a couple of barriers, and one is, how do you get the media onto the device if Wi-Fi editing isn't working for you for whatever reason, your resolution's too high. And so you've got to have a connectivity. So, okay, now it becomes less portable somehow because you have to have a powered hub and all these other drives and so forth. So, maybe it'll get fast enough with Wi-Fi 6 and, the other mobile technology improvements that are coming, hopefully in the next couple of years. But I also hesitate to, I have two iPads, right? I have this one, I have the 12.9 here by my computer all the time, which I use as an extension. But the one that I take with me everywhere is fantastic for everything except it's too small, right? For really refined work. And I'd have to use a Apple Pencil or some of the stylus because my fingers are too fat.
I tend to have an iPad per helicopter as well.
You never know when you're going to need to, in my last couple of trips, I didn't take a laptop with me at all. I've gotten rid of my laptop actually. I only use iPads, but mostly for stills and quick.
The iPad Pro specifically has a 4K camera that's beautiful on there, and you can shoot and then immediately pop in and start editing in LumaFusion immediately. And then if you really need to do some polishing, you're going to pass that right over to Final Cut. Like, we've got kids in Compton literally doing this, and like they're using a single iOS device and turning out content, and those cameras are only going to get better and better. So, the idea is like, what is the type of content, and really what is the purpose of this type of content, and where are you trying to take it? These are now the questions, like, what is the genre of your content, and what is the best way to turn that content out? These are the questions that everyone needs to ask. And it's different levels of things. Social media content is very different than narrative documentary and narrative feature or longer form. And it's really best tool for best job. That's kind of how we're looking at things.
Yeah, I think for viewing and picking shots and rating shots and that kind of thing, it's brilliant. Especially if you can, hand your producer an iPad and say, come back in a couple hours and give me your selects. Or you're working on the way back from the shoot, so you have a rough cut when you land. But it's just in the designer world, there's a concept called affordance, and it just means how can you get your hands on stuff, right? How can you is the button, you hit the wrong button every time you try to hit the right button? It's like that kind of are the lists too long every time you hit a menu? And I think that there's an affordance issue with these smaller devices, so that the super complex timeline, I think, becomes much more difficult to do than on a 27-inch monitor or two 27-inch monitors.
But Steve, I think you may have some interesting. I remember somebody from the Apple team told me, maybe you told me that you're the most dominant screen size that people use Final Cut Pro in is like a 13-inch screen, right?
15. Yeah, it's the laptop. It's the MacBook Pro, 15-inch MacBook Pro. So yeah, and that's why I like the sidecar thing, because you can just connect up a 12.9 iPad to it, and now you've got two pretty decent sized screens, and I definitely think it's valuable for that. I will say, having done a lot of editing on a moving bus, going back and forth to Silicon Valley, there are a lot of frustrations with that, and you're trying to. The bus is going like this, and you're trying to do sound mixing. It's not a great.
But is that more the bus than the iPad?
I think it's the road itself.
You could use an iPad not on a bus too, because that's
true. And you would go faster. I mean, there's a reason, obviously, that people have moved to. The laptops are fast. The screens are great. They're affordable. And you attach them up to shared storage, and you've got a production company, right? So,
honestly, when you use an iPad, my computer usage has my habits for using a computer have changed from being a post-production professional that was doing post-production all day, every day, doing color grading, all that, et cetera, to being more of a sort of a business executive user, and so my iPad usage has gone way up. And when I switch from, being on my iPad all day to using a computer, honestly, the computer feels totally ancient in comparison. It's so much slower. It's so much clunkier. And while, yes, we have these affordance issues, like if you look at, video is, if you look at sort of the ecosystem of creativity apps, video is not the hardest. Maybe 3D is even harder, and like some of the visual effects stuff, but then, video is kind of like one notch below that. And then sort of at the entry level of how hard is it to do professional work on like an app, on iPad or something, you have like design tools and photo tools. And obviously those have just gotten, like, photo tools are just almost better in every way. Like, I mean, the apps that you can get on iPad to do photo manipulation, I mean, I've been using Aperture, which is more drawing and things like that, but I mean, they're just incredible. So, it doesn't take a big stretch of the imagination to assume that, the video stuff, which is harder, it takes more cycles, it takes more innovation, it takes, more development, but they're going to get there too.
Now, the one thing that I think that is also missing a little bit at the moment is a good way to do screen real estate. That is the biggest issue I find on the video side, is really being able to do something at a high level with a small screen. So the second the dongle situation becomes a little bit fixable and you're able to connect in a larger monitor and things along those lines, and using an iPad as really a traveling device that you can hook into anything, and you can start on a small screen and get to a bigger one pretty easily and cleanly, that's when iOS and Mac merging and some of this stuff really becomes an interesting proposition. The other issue you have is media management at the moment on the iPad, which is kind of a total disaster for a lot of people, and incorporating other devices. It's just not clean yet, but 2 years.
So my prediction for when, that type of professional content creation can really take off on an iPad, I think it does require, there's one really, really, really important precursor to that taking off, which I think is having all the media centralized in the cloud. And, yes, Steve, there's connectivity issues, but like, they're solvable. Like, in fact, the connectivity part is actually not the problem today. Like, if you had the media in the cloud, the connectivity is fine. It's actually getting the source into the cloud that's getting the source in that is the really more the bottleneck than it is streaming it out once it's there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I discovered this last overseas trip. I was in France for 3 weeks, and I was shooting a couple of hundred, 80 megabyte stills a day, and at the end of the day, trying to upload that from the hotel just didn't work, right? It's because they just throttled me instantly. So, but I had multiple drives, and I was backing up to drives, but then I couldn't actually edit off the drives in a timely way. It wasn't responsive enough to work with those large files. So I just ended up, after backing it up to 2 other places, I would then just copy it to the internal drive on the iPad. And then it worked fine. And then trying to move that back. I was working with Lightroom because it has, I think, the best integration with desktop and mobile.
I think one of the products that's going to be really interesting to see come out maybe sometime soon. I agree with what Sam's saying. You can do a whole bunch of stuff in an iOS device. But I also know that most people don't want to shoot with an iOS camera, regardless of the quality. I think what's going to be cool is somebody making some sort of a box, a hardware thing. You clip it on the side of your camera, much like we do with, hardware recorders that also have some sort of maybe 5G. I don't know if I'm a full fan of 5G, but maybe some sort of an auto upload thing. So when I stop a clip, it goes, oh, let me put this on the cloud, and it's already there. I think that could be a really cool solution to kind of bridge the world and solve, this main thing about getting stuff up onto the cloud.
So, Chris, I don't know if you were aware or not, but we in fact, Frame.io is working on this, and we've been open and public about our plans for developing this. It's called Camera to Cloud. And, some of you probably caught the news several months ago. Michael Cioni joined Frame.io as our SVP of innovation. Yep. And he's overseeing this effort. And we decided to do this openly and publicly because while it's fine, the concept of that is relatively straightforward, but really getting it to work with the working professionals and having it be totally tried and true, the behavioral changes that need to happen to make this all work. We said, you know what? We're not going to develop this like in a back room. We're going to invite the community in to be part of our development plan. So we've been sharing it. But it's called Camera to Cloud, and we're working on it, and it'll do exactly that. And so I
want to just make sure nobody thinks that was a softball setup and like this was something I planned. That was clearly an example of me being ignorant and you being much smarter and ahead of everybody else.
Well, so I think that one of the things that, to Steve, to your point about the connectivity issues, like that's a problem today. And this is probably a 3 to 5 year arc, but I strongly believe that we are on the precipice of sort of the next major step function change in the way that video gets created. And that is going to be the transition to cloud, which is really only just starting to happen right now. We've, Frame.io has kind of been in this space for 5 years, kind of ahead of the market, really. And now, especially with COVID and everything else, like, oh my God, we can't work in a way where we're dependent on these local environments. Like, because almost none of our other business work is dependent on these local environments. And so there's been an acceleration, and we're really on the precipice of this next major step function change in the way that video gets created. And I would predict that this will be as big of a difference as it was from analog to digital. I think it'll be that profound. It'll be like a pre-cloud era and a post-cloud era. And the ideas of shuttling files around and having a hard drive that's connected to your computer, like you can't just open a browser, just open anything and just have access to everything the way that you do with basically every other part of your life. There's almost no part of your life that's dependent on stuff on your computer anymore, except for your video editing, except for your video projects. At least it's that way for me. So there's going to be a distinct pre-cloud and post-cloud era that'll just completely transform the way that video gets created. And I believe that's actually probably a 5-year time horizon where we really see like pretty solid adoption and change. Could, hey, plus or minus a couple of years, but that's where I'm.
But I think you're right. I think the whole COVID thing is going to accelerate that, to tell you the truth.
Absolutely.
There were elements to that, and I've had people in Los Angeles asking me about working in remote. They didn't use the cloud 10 years ago so much, but remotely, because they didn't want to go in and fight the traffic, right? Or in some cases, because they wanted to take over some of the post-production business in mid-tier market, and they could do that from Los Angeles as long as they just worked the time zones. And so, there's been that push for quite some time, but now COVID and it's both got to be more flexible and more controlled at the same time, right? Because the flexibility of where's your media, what are you linked to, what's the resolution, why should I care, versus, oh my God, what did you do with all my files? And you knocked everything out of sync, right? So the back when we were in the early days of the shared storage and Avid, I did a lot of research talking to people about cultural issues with sharing. And you could see very clearly that it's completely different all over the world. I mean, you talk to the people in Japan and they're like, oh no, you have to have some sort of wax stamp, to, so to speak, because that's what they, the way that they do paperwork in Japan is like a personal stamp. Okay, now you can hand it off to somebody else. How are you going to do that in video? Like, well, we can't really do that. Okay, then I can't use it. And other people are like, yeah, well, I don't care because nobody makes mistakes here and everybody's a professional and nothing bad will ever happen. And I'm thinking, yeah, I've seen that turn out badly before. So, there has to be both that control and that flexibility. And it's going to be a fine line, I think, that'll probably come about through iteration.
I think the control and the flexibility part is things that software can solve pretty well. There's, putting in the sort of the right controls, who can do what, who can see what, when, blah, 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 blah. Like that part I think is a fairly worked out problem in a lot of different sort of software products that have to deal with process management and things like that. From my perspective, there's one technology sort of breakthrough, not even a breakthrough, sort of evolution that's necessary to really kind of bring this to fruition. And the reality is we're kind of already there. Like we're very, very, very close, right? But when you think about doing video editing in the cloud, right? True video editing in the cloud, you gotta think about the architecture of how this would work, okay? So you can have, really what you need to do is you need to be able to do ultra low latency video streaming. So imagine you're running Final Cut in the cloud, right? Imagine just Final Cut's just running, right? And it's easy enough from a web browser or from any kind of local client to be sending the commands up, play, pause, loop, blah, 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 right? That's all easy to do. And that can be done in extraordinarily low latency. You can send the commands up. Now, the server has to be able to process that stuff in like sub 50 millisecond latency and then send the result back down. So it feels as though everything's happening locally without in fact, nothing happening locally. And there is good news is that, see, the video industry, we're not the biggest, okay? So we don't have sort of the best and the brightest minds working on solving, all the most tech challenging things, which is why you see like, oh my God, the visual effects you can do in Snapchat compared to what we had to do to because you have the most brilliant minds solving problems for these ginormous markets. And now video industry has the advantage of the gaming industry. So gaming is trying to move to streaming. They're trying to stream games from the cloud where like literally nothing is running locally. And I'm not a gamer, so maybe some of you are, but I know that gamers need ultra low latency. When you're trying to kill someone, that little joystick movement, like everything matters. Probably more so than video editing. And Google in particular and others, Google has Google Stadia, where they're streaming games from the cloud, and you have this joystick control has to go up, run that video has to be, processed and then streamed back down to the client in like sub 50 milliseconds. And that architecture is going to unlock basically anything that you thought, people think, oh, certain things can't be done in the cloud. You can't do, you can't do 3D, you can't do visual effects, you can't do whatever, right? But what this architecture does is it unlocks it. You could say, well, all of the architectural challenges that prevented us from doing this in the past, now we just take the same kind of technology, the same software that we've been writing for desktop, you run it in the cloud, you make it work on big distributed systems, and you just have to do ultra low latency streaming of the result back to the client application. And that's going to not just for our industry, that's going to unlock a whole new wave of software that runs in the cloud. And I think, gaming is pushing it along. So that's kind of nice.
I'm loving this conversation, and I might have to invite everybody back. We have the clock and stuff. We have a giveaway that we have to do. First of all, Emery, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time. At the beginning of this, Emery's like, so what is this going to take like about a half hour of my time? And now here we are like an hour and a half later. So thank you.
It's been absolutely fascinating, especially when you
Super
went into the nitty gritty of the techie stuff behind it. And now, I can understand why and I've got something to argue against why people, why is my Dropbox so slow? And I go, well, actually, I know, because this is quick. So thank you. And thank you, Steve, for joining us, Sam and Felipe and everybody. Now, don't leave. And I got to tell you, the attendees list just keeps getting higher, even after an hour. So I have something we need to give away. And we've never done this. And we're probably going to get in trouble for doing it the wrong way. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a website. And the first person that texts into the chat, open up your chat window, the name of the event. This will be the attendees only. This is the attendees only. Unfortunately, YouTube's 30 seconds behind. You know what? Sorry, YouTube. You could have joined us. I gave you the link. You could have joined us on Zoom. Or alternatively, it's the first person to put it in the attendees and the first person on YouTube, and then we just flip a coin between them.
Why don't we make this really complicated? Why don't we make it the 7th person and see what the game theory is around that?
Well, nobody would do it then, would they?
We could be here all day. So anyway, the first person that text or chats the name of the event, and this way we can, it's obvious, we can just go like that. They're going to get it. All right. So I'm going to put are we going to go on YouTube and attendees and just pick between the two? Just flip a coin. No, we're just going to do Zoom. There's a premium for being part of the Zoom conversation. So here we go. I'm going to put it. Everybody get your little typing guys. Look at that. We even have more people already. All right. And here we go. Here comes the name of the event. Go. First person to chat it. And what we're doing is we're giving you a free pass to this. It's valued at $300. Bill Davis in San Diego.
I have a huge disadvantage if I would be participating too, because I see it mirrored. So as soon as it appeared, I was like, oh my God, no.
All right. So Bill Davis wins. Sorry, everybody else. and there's some people cursing Bill's name in the chat window.
This is obviously Bill Davis from San Diego, not Bill Davis, the Final Cut Pro 10 product.
No, this is Bill Davis #1, not Bill Davis #2.
Do you ever see them in the same place at the same time?
I have a photograph of them side by side, but I said, don't get too close, otherwise you just start to warm up and there'll be a big explosion. A rip in the space-time continuum or whatever you want to call it. But yes, I have seen them.
Okay, so Peter, that's up to you to remember. Bill Davis, San Diego. He's the winner of the raffle.
I can remember Bill. But the post-production online thing it's the 17th to the 19th of this month, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a week away or something, 2 weeks away.
Yeah, and what we're hoping to do is also have some people from FMC on another one of these and talk about it a bit more. And we might just have another pass, which is worth $299 to attend. Well, we have got another pass. So we're hoping to do another one of these before the conference starts. And if you have a look at the speakers, they've got quite a lot of good speakers on there. A lot of people who are friends of FCP.co. Quite a lot.
Stella's putting a lot of details in the chat window right now.
Yeah, I think Patrick's doing a bit as well. I think Michael Cioni's doing a bit.
Michael Cioni's going to be there. Yep.
I think Sam, you're doing one or two.
Yeah, there's going to be a bunch of educational ones. The other thing, for those of you who are bummed who didn't win the Post-Production World online ticket, you should also know that the Apple track is going to be free for all. So if you were just interested in the Apple track, that's going to be free. But there's a ton of panelists. Like, there's going to be some really great stuff on the Apple track, and then across the board, that's the paid conference. So it just depends on what if you've been to NAB, basically this is what happens at Post-Production World, but now it's going to be online for obvious reasons.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant. We were going to bring in, should we bring in our guest? We had somebody from the attendees. Peter, do we want to push that? We're going kind of long here.
Yeah, well, let's pull out. Alex had a really good question. Let's just pull him in and let's just have 10 minutes and then we'll knock it on the head. How about
All right. So we're joining the room today is Mr. Gullner, also from London. Alex, are you here with us yet? I don't know if there's something you have to click on. Should be there. Hey, Mr. Gullner in your red shirt. How are you today?
I'm doing absolutely fine, thank you. It's been a great show. I especially with Frame.io, the security stuff I think is really great. Just the feeling of security, knowing that you can trust them with your media, and everyone can just be safely working together is really important. So people can forget about the technology and just be creative with it. I think it's really cool.
So what you were gonna jump in? I'm sorry, I didn't do enough pre-production. You were gonna jump in and share something.
Well, also Alex had a good question saying that.
Oh.
What was it? You think you're saying San Francisco is going to be hollowed out because the creative industries are just going to move out? Is that right?
Well, I mean, in the case of Silicon Valley, I mean, Steve maybe should speak to this because he knows the nature of what you get for your dollar for employment and where you live. And you're saying, well, for that $1 million, what do you get in San Francisco compared with even more lovely places elsewhere in the USA or anywhere else in the world? And then my other point was actually about Final Cut as well. But anyway, we'll come back to that in a moment if you want.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a good question. I mean, I the restaurant business is one of the main draws. All the cool kids want to live here, right? We have more Michelin stars than New York City, but those predicted to lose like 50% over time. And these high-end places can't really switch over to takeout all that well, although they're trying. So we'll see. So yeah, there's a lot of, it's like a playground for young adults and adults here in terms of music and events and, everything. I think there's still a lot of value in being here, but you definitely would need to get a higher salary in order to justify it, right? I mean, if it's just like a medium level, normal everyday tech salary, you probably might want to start thinking about moving. I mean, the problem is that there's still reasons to come down here all the time. And I know a couple of people at Apple that live outside of the area, and they all work through WebEx and so forth. It works okay. But you don't run into people in the hallways. You can't just say, hey, I saw this thing, and get two people together that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. So, and I think, Steve Jobs was pretty big on that sort of happy accident stuff. And so I'm afraid that would be more difficult unless, maybe it happens better over Slack at some point once people move to Slack instead of, regular email, but.
Well, it could be that people will actually want to work for the Silicon Valley company that actually solves that problem, as opposed to trying to make something else, trying to digitize something or to force people to be in one physical location. So maybe that.
Yeah.
But my other question, but this is just for everybody, of course, is it important that high-end TV and film use Final Cut Pro 10? Does it actually matter? Should we try and concentrate on that?
No, it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters, because I think I said this on the last one. What we've seen is, I always knew that kind of like broadcast TV and YouTube were converging, but I didn't realize that broadcast TV was going to come down to YouTube, because that's all I see. When I flick my screen on now, it's just people on Skype talking, and I go, this is YouTube. So
it's even more than that, Peter. I think we're seeing YouTube surpass broadcast.
Yeah, certainly
in numbers.
Yeah, look, there'll always be a place for news and sport on broadcast TV.
Sure.
Hopefully, because quite a bit of my income comes from the latter. But everything else, well, it finished yesterday, or they didn't finish yesterday. So I just think that, we're going back to the previous question, which we didn't talk about, is if you can do stuff remotely, then is it going to go to the person who lives 50 kilometers outside of San Francisco? Or is it going to go to another country where labor is cheaper?
Or will it just go to the best person?
Or will it go to the best people? Yes, indeed.
I think you're going to start seeing trusted networks develop all over the world, where you're going to have a set of people in a given environment who then collaborate with others around the world. And you're going to get to pick your collaborators. And there's going to be different teams for different types of projects. And additionally, I think the other thing that you're going to see happen is you're going to see video open up into different markets. So we look at this as if the video world is just broadcasting, or it's just YouTube, or it's just these other things. This is now going to be ubiquitous across education, every class, every review, every sale, all of these things. Every company is going to have a video department. So we think that video is just going to be media and entertainment, because that's how we're used to looking at it. This is going to be ubiquitous across all industries as a communication tool. And so it's going to get cheaper, but it's also, there's going to be more jobs than you've ever seen. And you're going to be required to have some video skills, no matter what your walk of life is. And so anyone who thinks the video industry is going to get smaller is crazy. You just might see fewer jobs in the media and entertainment space, but you're going to see more video jobs in every other industry.
Right. So let me bring it to this. I got to do a little bit of business here. First of all, once again, thank you, Otherworld Computing, for making all of this happen. And there's this other thing, Industrial Revolution. I think they make plugins or something. Yeah. I hear they're pretty good. And I also want to say, this morning on Alex Lindsay's show, there was a discussion about content being king. And Alex was very quick to shut somebody down. He says, no, content is not king. Community is king, and content is the honeypot. Not my words. This comes from Alex Lindsay. And I think that what we're seeing here today, and what we're talking about, and what Sam was just saying, is because of the technology that we have available to us, we can work with our chosen community. This is clearly a community. When I look at the 100+ people and the comments that I'm seeing in the chat rooms and stuff, people saying, wow, it's great to have, the gang back together. This is what we get. And it's up to us to remember that what we're doing now, we deal with technology, but it's also the human experience. So community is the king, and this is a great community. And I want to say to Peter, thank you so much for making this happen, Sam, and the people at, Otherworld and Industrial Revolution, Peter. Thank you. But this is a great thing. We're going to do this again in a couple of weeks.
Oh, hopefully next week, if you're up for it.
Oh, yeah, we've already got the next show booked. We'll talk about it later. Yeah.
All right. We'll figure that out. So we're going to do this.
Was this the inaugural show? Was this show number 1?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it's show 9.
That's why we don't know what we're doing,
really, but yeah. Yeah. This is the first proper one like this that we've done, and I just think having Zoom and being able to invite people in and stuff like that, and it all does it for you and everything, it's just perfect because you've got a moving mix of people, which is great. And I think it's great. I mean, we've been on for an hour and a half. We could keep going, but we can't. And thank you, Emery. You said be on for half an hour. You've been on for an hour and a half. That's thank you very much.
Glad to be here. Appreciate
All
the
right,
invite.
let's wrap this up.
Inaugural episode.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up. We'll be back. I'm going to kill the YouTube stream. So thanks for joining us on YouTube. What was it? It was like, I was like 60, 75